Dreams without goals are just dreams and ultimately fuel disappointment. On the road to achieve your dreams, you must apply discipline, but more importantly, consistency. Because without commitment, you will never start, but without consistency, you will never finish. Now, with that quote from Denzel Washington, let's start with today's session, a very important class for today, because we are going to talk about RBI as a source of income for Government of India. Now, in pursuit of this lecture, I will be discussing whether Reserve Bank of India is rightly said to be a source of income or not. And there have been recent issues and there have been recent controversies. Because of that, इसका static portion important हो जाता है and we will be discussing that. Now let's begin, and as always we will begin with an introduction to the entire team of faculty of Sriram's IAS. Now this entire team is there to help you guys out through the entire process of your preparation, your journey towards achieving your goals and making your dreams come true. This is our beloved director Sriram sir, and the entire team of faculty here. This is me. Let's move further, giving you a brief introduction about myself, my name, my qualifications, and years of experience, the kind of subjects that I've handled. Now, beyond that, moving further, you also should know if you are availing any course on Unacademy that is being given to you by Sriram's IS, then certainly this referral code is going to help you guys out, because using this referral code of SRIRAMS, that is Sriram's, you can avail a 25% discount for all the offerings that Sriram's IS is bringing to you on Unacademy platform. अब चाहे वो फाउंडेशन कोर्स हो विच इज पर्टिकुलरली फॉर 2024, इट इज अवेलेबल राइट नाउ, उसको अवेल कर सकते हैं आप. देन देर आर क्रैश कोर्सेज, वन ऑन करंट अफेयर्स, वन ऑन जनरल स्टडीज एंड वन ऑन सी सैट. तो अगर आपको इनमें से किसी भी सब्जेक्ट में हेल्प चाहिए, 2023 के लिए आप प्रिपेयर कर रहे हैं, देन सर्टेनली यू शुड यूज दिस रेफरल कोड. वन मोर थिंग, इफ यू आर लुकिंग टू ऑप्ट फॉर public administration optional, then also this referral code will work, and you should go on Unacademy platform and follow me for more. And I have delivered a number of lectures pursuing the aspects pertaining to, say, for example, how to approach an optional subject, what optional subject you should choose, kya strategy honi chahiye. Similarly, I've also covered a lot of current affairs classes on Unacademy UPSC Articulate channel and on the Unacademy platform as well. So make sure to follow us throughout. ठीक है जी. Now, the results that have humbled us with success, these individual names, I wish and I hope and I pray, and we, the entire team of faculty of Sriram's IS, is hoping to see your name as well in this list. This is from 2022. Let's make sure that your name also enters the list. Chaliye. With that thought, let's break some news. Rather than breaking a leg, let's break some news. So breaking news ये है that RBI, the Central Board of RBI, the Board of Directors basically, they've decided to transfer a sum of rupees 52637 crores. Now the sum is not supposed to be remembered. This is basic knowledge for a UPSC aspirant. अच्छा, इसके साथ साथ आरबीआई अपने नेट इनकम का 123414 करोड़ रुपीस भी ऑलरेडी पे कर चुका है टू द गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया वे बैक इन 2018-19. नाउ दिस पेमेंट ट्रांजैक्शन has been the bone of contention between RBI and the government of India, one, and it has been a cause of concern for many economists, and also it has been drawing interests from all corners, particularly for UPSC aspirant. यहाँ पर एक static component है जो कि हमारे लिए relevant हो जाता है, and we will be covering that as well. In this session we will be going into details of all of this. ठीक है जी. Just give me a second, let me shorten myself down so that आप लोगों को पूरा दिख जाए. चलिए. Now I hope it is visible now. So the agenda is that government has sought this transfer and RBI has made this transfer. It seems fine to this point, given that RBI is one, the lender of last resort. Fine. Also, it is government's banker. It is a banker's bank as well as government's bank. तो वो government का bank है, इसलिए लगता है कि चलो ठीक है, transfers होने चाहिए. But what is important is that this money of 52637 crore rupees. This is the curious case given that RBI is transferring this amount as it has been found to be excess or surplus in its capital reserve. अब यहां से कहानी घूमनी शुरू हो जाती है। क्यों? क्योंकि कैपिटल रिजर्व क्या है, इसके क्या कंपोनेंट्स होते हैं, आरबीआई इसको कैसे मैनेज करता है, कैसे मेंटेन करता है, all of that is going to be relevant for a UPSC aspirant. Now, capital reserve is that money which is procured by RBI. It is kept by RBI out of its income और वो इसलिए रखता है ताकि इमरजेंसी सिचुएशंस को मीट आउट किया जा सके। कभी खुदा न खास्ता कुछ गलत हो जाए, for that case, in case of emergencies, RBI keeps this money. Now, this capital reserve, this is not directly deployed to fight any emergency, but it is still providing a sound base for RBI to make actions or to take actions whenever such issues crop up. अब पिछले कुछ सालों में क्या हुआ है, there has been a debate whether RBI having this surplus reserve should transfer it, number one, whether or not RBI has a surplus in the capital reserve as well, ये भी doubt रहा है. For that purpose, in fact, government had also set up a committee जिसके बारे में इस क्लास में ही चर्चा होगी. So stay tuned till the end of this session because I'm going to talk about Bimal Jalan committee as well. This committee is very important. Iski recommendations as well as the the point of view of Bimal Jalan committee with respect to capital reserves और capital reserve के क्या components हैं, हर एक चीज की तह तक जाएंगे, डिटेल में जाएंगे. Everything is relevant for you guys. Do not skip on this class or do not skip on any component of this class. Very important. Now, any doubts that you have with respect to the concepts that we have been discussing इस क्लास से रिलेटेड पर्टिकुलरली, तो उसको कमेंट सेक्शन में आप इजीली पूछ सकते हैं. अच्छा लगे तो लाइक भी कर सकते हैं. Nothing stopping you. And of course, you should subscribe to the channel as well. Follow Sriram IAS for more details. Now, those who are in the government, they are suggesting that RBI is one of the highest capitalized central banks in the world. It means that RBI has parked a lot of money, probably one of the highest in terms of volume as compared to the rest of the central banks, and that gives RBI a special edge. It is a good thing. Why? Because we have come a long way after 1991, and after 1991 we do not want any kind of exigency like the crisis, the balance of payment crisis that happened. और इसी वजह से आरबीआई के पास ये सरप्लस होना अच्छी बात लगती है. आरबीआई बीइंग मोस्ट कैपिटलाइज्ड बैंक इन द वर्ल्ड सुनने में अच्छा लगता है. इट इज नॉट टू बैड अ थिंग टू बी हैपनिंग. Now, RBI is set to transfer 30,307 crore rupees surplus, which is going to be down 69% from 2021. 2022 में जितना पैसा इन्होंने ट्रांसफर किया, इट इज डाउन फ्रॉम अराउंड 1 लाख करोड़ रुपीस जो मार्च 2021 में हुआ था, एंड इज लोअर देन 74,000 which was budgeted for this fiscal. 74,000 expected था, 30,000 transfer होगा. The fall in the transferable surplus is because the increased interest rates that RBI had to pay the banks which parked their surplus liquidity in the reverse repo window. So because जब banks RBI को पैसा देते हैं and they purchase government securities from RBI, तो RBI को उस पे interest pay करना पड़ता है, and that interest, because it was huge, because many banks had gone through the reverse repo window, and because of that the surplus money that RBI had gone down. This was the major reason. Now let's understand, ये बार बार कैपिटल रिजर्व मैं बोल रहा हूं, surplus or deficit, whatever the case might be, but if we have to understand, let's understand the components of capital reserve. Now this capital reserve is that fund जो कि आरबीआई के पास होता है कि अगर in case any financial contingency happens, any emergency situation, financial emergency like situation, not exactly like financial emergency from the Indian polity, but any fiscal problem if it emanates for the Indian economy, तो आरबीआई के पास कुछ पैसा हो, वो स्ट्रांगली पार्क्ड हो, हार्ड करेंसी में पार्क्ड हो, किसी तरीके से ऐसे हो जहां से उस पैसे को यूटिलाइज किया जा सके फॉर रिमूविंग और रिमूविंग द रिस्क from Indian economy. Now, this liquidity emergency for example, emerged in 2007, 2008, the global financial crisis. Then IL and FS का liquidity situation जब हुआ था, if you remember, that also is a financial emergency, given that ILFS was one of the most prominent institutions जिनकी वजह से पूरे इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर सेक्टर को इंपैक्ट पड़ा. नाउ आरबीआई का जो कैपिटल रिजर्व है, इट इज एस्टिमेटेड टू बी समवेयर अराउंड 9.5 लाख करोड़ रुपीस, और समवेयर अराउंड 26, ऑलमोस्ट वन फोर्थ ऑफ द टोटल एसेट्स एज ऑफ जून 2018, which is a fair amount. It's not too bad an amount. Now, the buffer that RBI keeps to meet these financial contingencies while facing potential crisis like situation in the economy, this is that capital reserve. एक buffer का काम करता है, एक cushioning provide करता है just in case external exigencies की वजह से financial contingencies इंडिया को face करनी पड़ जाए या risk face करना पड़ जाए. Further, the controversy has been that RBI has excess capital reserves and it has to be used for specific purposes. अब अगर सरप्लस है तो वो गवर्नमेंट को ट्रांसफर होना चाहिए, नहीं होना चाहिए, ऑल ऑफ दैट वाज अ पार्ट ऑफ कंट्रोवर्सी. बट वी फॉर वन बीइंग यूपीएससी एस्पिरेंट्स, वी डोंट हैव टू गो इनटू दोस डिटेल्स. अपने को कंट्रोवर्सी में नहीं जाना है. अपने को क्या देखना है? अपने को देखना है व्हाट इज दिस कैपिटल रिजर्व एंड व्हाट अबाउट दिस इकोनॉमिक कैपिटल फ्रेमवर्क. इन चीजों को डिटेल में देखना है. Because RBI's central board, the central board of RBI had created a committee. This committee was not created by government, it was created by RBI. So indirectly आप कह सकते हैं. And that Bimal Jalan committee was to decide on an economic capital framework. That capital framework was to determine that what would be the right volume of these capital reserves, कि कितना पैसा RBI को capital reserve में रखना चाहिए. ये सब बातें जानकर अब समझते हैं व्हाट इज द पर्पस ऑफ दिस कैपिटल रिजर्व. कैपिटल रिजर्व का पर्पस, मेन पर्पस ये है कि आरबीआई को फाइनेंशियल इमरजेंसीज में मदद करता है. रेडी फंड्स आर मेड अवेलेबल विद आरबीआई फॉर वेरियस रीजंस. देयर आर मल्टीपल टाइप्स ऑफ फंड्स that are a part of the capital reserve. The first few that I'm going to share the names of right now is, for example, the contingency fund, the CF. Now, contingency fund helps RBI to meet risks of sudden liquidity shortages in the market. अचानक से पैसे की जरूरत आन पड़ गई, अचानक से जो आरबीआई के पास गवर्नमेंट सिक्योरिटीज है उसकी वैल्यू गिर जाती है, और इफ देयर इज अ स्टीप एक्सचेंज रेट मूवमेंट which causes rupee to depreciate a lot against US dollars, in that case exigencies के अंदर contingency fund से पैसा निकाला जाता है and liquidity shortage को दूर किया जाता है. Number one. Number two, there is another fund by the name of ADF, Asset Development Fund. Now, this fund is expected to give support to the associates or subsidiaries or all the institutions, regulatory bodies and institutions that used to or that are a part and parcel of family of RBI's subsidiaries, like the National Housing Board or the NHB. NHB को कभी भी फाइनेंशियल क्राइसिस होता है तो सपोर्ट आरबीआई अगर देता है तो इट इज थ्रू एडीएफ, एसेट डेवलपमेंट फंड. I hope you understand the process here. Now, once you understand this, let's understand the components of capital reserve. There are 5 components that RBI has in terms of capital reserve. The first two are CF and ADF, the contingency fund and the asset development fund. ये specific purposes के लिए होते हैं and इसमें RBI provisioning के जरिए, through the process of provisioning, RBI keeps on adding funds. There are other 3 as well. For example, CGRA, IRA and FCVA. इनके बारे में भी अभी आगे डिस्कशन करनी है. Do not skip on the video. Make sure you watch it till the end. These are called valuation accounts. There are certain profits, gains or losses in foreign exchange, government securities or foreign currency contracts that are handled by RBI using these accounts. और वो कैसे होता है आगे आने वाले पार्ट में हम समझेंगे. All these 5 components are to be recorded in the liability side of RBI's balance sheet. मतलब इन फंड्स के अंदर जो पैसा है वो RBI की liability side में आता है बैलेंस शीट के अंदर. एसेट्स वर्सेस लायबिलिटीज में ये लायबिलिटी कंपोनेंट के अंदर आता है। ये चीज याद रखने वाली है, प्रीलिम्स में डायरेक्ट क्वेश्चन यहां से आ सकता है, यू शुड रिमेंबर दिस। कूल। मूविंग फर्दर, knowing about various components of capital reserve. Number one, contingency fund. Number two, asset development fund. Three, CGRA, currency and gold revaluation account. करेंसी एंड गोल्ड री इवैल्यूएशन अकाउंट। अगर आप अब नाम देखें तो इसमें वैल्यूएशन वर्ड आना शुरू हो गया है। इन्वेस्टमेंट री इवैल्यूएशन अकाउंट एंड फाइनली फॉरेन एक्सचेंज फॉरवर्ड कॉन्ट्रैक्ट्स वैल्यूएशन अकाउंट। लेट्स गो इनटू द डिटेल्स ऑफ ऑल दीज 5 टाइप्स ऑफ फंड्स एंड अकाउंट्स जो कि कैपिटल रिजर्व का पार्ट है। Number one being the contingency fund. Now, this fund is set apart just to make sure any unforeseen contingency happens, तो RBI के पास पैसा हो. So that monetary exchange rate policy operations, systemic risks, any risks that is arising on account of special responsibilities, जो RBI की जिम्मेदारी है, everything which is unforeseen उसमें रिस्क आता है, तो RBI is to handle it using this contingency fund. Further, we have the asset development fund. Asset development fund RBI की subsidiaries and associate institutions को internal capital expenditure provide करने के लिए help करता है. Why? Because it is an asset development fund. So all the assets that are handled by RBI, including the subsidiaries, उनको कभी भी जरूरत पड़ती है पैसे की तो ADF के जरिए वो पैसा ट्रांसफर किया जाता है. Further, we have the difference between CF and ADF and how are they financed. Now, ever since 2014, चाहे वो CF हो, contingency fund हो या asset development fund हो, इनको provisioning के process के जरिए, just like banks provision for your loans, जब आप loan लेते हैं, the banks have to provision a sum of money around 60%, around 70% of that money वो अलग से रखते हैं ताकि कभी भी अगर डिफॉल्ट हो तो that provisioning amount can help you remove and sustain through those losses. तो वो लॉस को मिटिगेट करने के लिए होता है, अडेप्ट करने के लिए होता है. नाउ सिमिलरली RBI also keeps money on the basis of provisioning. Meaning of the word provisioning here is that an estimated amount has been allocated from a given source. कहीं से पैसा उठाया और एक जगह पर रख दिया. If you provision for something, that means आपने पैसा स्टोर करके रख दिया and some rainy day कभी जरूरत आन पड़ेगी, then this provisioning will be helpful. वो जरूरत कब आती है? जब सामने से जिस सोर्स के लिए आपने वो पैसा रखा, when you are keeping aside this money, for what purpose you are keeping it aside, if that purpose is flailing, अगर आपके गवर्नमेंट सिक्योरिटीज में रेट नीचे चला जाता है, if the gold valuation goes down for example, or anything, any financial emergency happens, any difficulty happens, then this provisioning amount will help you mitigate that risk. Now, the allocation to CF and ADF, it is not shown in the final income statement of RBI. RBI की total income की जो final income statement है, they are not shown in that. The income is estimated by making the provisioning to the CF, यहाँ पर spelling mistake हो गया, CF and ADF. Once the provisioning has happened, after that you estimate the final income. That means ये अलग से चला जाता है and it is like EBITDA, earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, amortization, etc etc. तो ये earnings after है. That means income of RBI is calculated once CF और ADF का पैसा हमने अलग से पार्क कर दिया है. On the other hand, अगर आप 2014 से पहले की बात करें, deductions to CF and ADF were made after estimation of income. अब इनकम बाद में एस्टिमेट होती है, पहले ऐसा नहीं होता था. टुडे दे आर नॉट अ पार्ट ऑफ द नेट इनकम ऑफ RBI. जो इसकी प्रोविजनिंग है, नेट इनकम में से सब्ट्रैक्टेड है. ये ध्यान रखिएगा, याद रखिएगा. आफ्टर मेकिंग ऑल द एलोकेशंस टू CF एंड ADF फ्रॉम इनकम, ट्रांसफर्स वर यूज्ड टू बी मेड टू गवर्नमेंट. अभी ऐसा नहीं, अभी ऐसा नहीं. अभी क्या है? Ever since 2014, when the things changed, provisioning has been quite weak. particularly after 2017. फॉर एग्जाम्पल 2017-18 के अंदर ओनली 3,901 crore rupees were added to CF, but nothing was added to ADF. Nothing was added. Now, during previous years also, if you see, provisioning has been weak. तो CF और ADF में पैसा कम डाला जा रहा है by RBI. Now, what has been happening? Sorry, I'm sorry. The CF यहाँ पर and ADF यहाँ पर. What has been happening to CF and ADF over the last few years? इसको जरा समझते हैं. देखो, जो CF और ADF का proportion है, it has been declining. This can be a statement based question in prelims. You should know about it. Yes, it is declining over the last few years. Number one. Number two, there has been a rapid decline ever since the launch of provisioning started to happen rather than allocation from declared income. 2014 से पहले, बिफोर 2014, यू यूज टू हैव एलोकेशन, टोटल इनकम उसमें से एलोकेट कर दिया. अभी प्रोविजनिंग होती है और उसके बाद फाइनल इनकम डिसाइड होती है. दिस प्रोविजनिंग हैज ब्रॉट डाउन दी सीएफ एंड एडीएफ प्रोविजनिंग, या कह लीजिए सीएफ और एडीएफ में जो पैसा अब एलोकेट होता है वो कम होता है कंपेयर टू बिफोर. बट पहले इनकम में से जाता था, अब इनकम में से नहीं जाता है, ये भी फर्क है. Now, understandably, if you consider RBI का CF और ADF बहुत critical है and they have registered a decline over the few years, last few years. Why? Because there have been high transfers to the government as well. In the background, that provisioning has been adopted. प्रोविजनिंग तो अडॉप्ट हो गई, लेकिन प्रोविजनिंग के बेसिस पर सीएफ एडीएफ में पैसा कम जा रहा है. नंबर वन. नंबर टू, गवर्नमेंट को ट्रांसफर्स भी बढ़ रहे. नाउ, apart from that, there are a few other accounts by the name of revaluation accounts. ये revaluation accounts भी important है दोस्तों. Let's understand that. For example, RBI holds several accounts for its holdings, handlings of foreign currencies, government securities, US securities, gold, forward contracts, etc., etc. अब इनको मैनेज करने के लिए देर आर मेनी चेंजेस दैट हैपन इन द वैल्यूज ऑफ दीज सिक्योरिटीज, ऑफ दीज इंस्ट्रूमेंट्स इन द इंटरनेशनल मार्केट. टू मेक श्योर दैट आरबीआई डज नॉट गो इन द रेड, उसको नुकसान, और इन द ब्लैक फॉर एग्जांपल, उसको नुकसान ना हो इसमें, तो रीवैल्यूएशन इज टू बी मेड विद रिस्पेक्ट टू देयर वैल्यूज इन द मार्केट. Now, for that purpose, there are three revaluation and valuation accounts. उनको एक एक करके अब देख लेते हैं. सबसे पहले CGRA, करेंसी एंड गोल्ड से रिलेटेड जो भी रिवैल्यूएशन की जरूरत पड़ती है वो CGRA का पार्ट बनती है. CGRA shows fund that is available to compensate RBI's loss in case gold or forex reserves that RBI holds is going down in value. तो उसको कॉम्पनसेट करने के लिए जो फंड क्रिएट किया गया है दैट इज CGRA. गेन्स एंड लॉसेस बोथ of values of gold and foreign currency assets decreases or increases the CGRA money respectively. As simple as that. Now, changes in the market value of gold or any foreign exchange asset, उसमें अगर कोई भी चेंज होता है, it is reflected in the change in CGRA as well. Now, this CGRA provides to be a buffer against the exchange rate or gold price fluctuations. जब CGRA enough नहीं होता है, काफी नहीं होता है to fully meet the exchange losses, it is replenished from contingency fund. Remember this fact, guys. Prelims were the fact that contingency fund is used to replenish CGRA. Always remember this. Further, if there is any increase in gold price or if there is any depreciation of Indian rupee in the international markets, then it increases the CGRA fund. We have to then increase the CGRA fund. क्यों? क्योंकि gold prices महंगी हो रही हैं and it might lead to losses when we have to purchase gold, or further if Indian rupee is depreciating, we have to increase the CGRA fund. Further, it is registered in an increase in 2018 mainly due to depreciation of Indian rupee against dollar and international prices of gold. It has been seen, and ये एक याद रखने वाली बात है that अगर gold prices बढ़ रही हैं, rupee depreciate हो रहा है, it seems like a not so conducive situation. We have to increase CGRA fund. CGRA fund, which is currency, क्योंकि इंडियन रुपी की बात हो रही है. गोल्ड, because gold prices are also being considered. Revaluation account. When I say revaluation, it has certain connotation जिसके बारे में आगे चल के डिस्कशन होगी इसी क्लास के अंदर. Stay tuned. Investment and revaluation account, IRA. IRA shows buffer amount available to RBI to make sure that any loss or any gain is accommodated or compensated when it is in foreign securities or government securities in domestic segment. तो चाहे तो वो फॉरेन गवर्नमेंट सिक्योरिटीज हो, इंटरनेशनल सिक्योरिटीज हो या डोमेस्टिक सिक्योरिटीज हो, आरबीआई होल्ड्स अ सिग्निफिकेंट पोर्शन ऑफ गवर्नमेंट सिक्योरिटीज ऑफ इंडिया एज वेल एज फॉरेन सिक्योरिटीज. तो उसके अंदर कहीं पर भी इफ देर इज मार्क्ड टू मार्केट गेन्स और लॉसेस, व्हाट इज मार्क्ड टू मार्केट? If I were to measure whether I am making a gain or a loss, you know, those unrealized, I don't know if any one of you guys actually is a trader or invests money in stock market, तो वहां पर unrealized gain और unrealized loss ऐसे लिखकर आता है. That money is not a part of your account. It is just the change in valuation of the security that you hold, maybe any stock or any share. In that value of that stock, profit आ गया या गेन हो गया या लॉस हो गया, that is accounted by unrealized profit or unrealized losses. Now this can only be measured if you mark that security for the market. तो जब मार्किंग होती है तो उससे पता चलता है कि अनरियलाइज्ड लॉस या अनरियलाइज्ड गेन कितना हुआ है, एंड दैट इज व्हाट दिस टर्म मींस, मार्क्ड टू मार्केट गेन्स और लॉसेस. एज सिंपल एज दैट. Now, IRA handles only investment revaluation. It's not about gold, it's not about currency, it is about securities. So, foreign securities and domestic securities, they are considered. Further, moving to the last type, and that is Forex, foreign exchange related forward contracts valuation account, FCVA. Now this measures again marked to market and again in a periodic form gains and losses. So unrealized fayda profit and unrealized loss is measured for RBI from the foreign exchange forward contracts, and on that basis basically this fund or this account is maintained. चलिए अब आगे पढ़ते हैं. Let's talk about the major recommendations that ECF or the Committee on Economic Capital Framework of RBI had talked about. Now, RBI had developed an ECF. This ECF is not just because of this committee, ये इससे पहले से चला आ रहा है. Now, ECF, and आप मुझे comment section में बताइएगा कि ECF for the first time कब आया? When did it come for the first time for capital reserves of RBI? ये आपको हिंट दे देता हूं मैं, RBI की वेबसाइट पे आपको डेटा मिल जाएगा, आपको कहीं इधर उधर जाने की जरूरत नहीं है. Now RBI has developed this ECF particularly to understand and determine, because it is a very complex set of things. आपके पास करेंसी है, गोल्ड है, फॉरेन सिक्योरिटीज है, and then domestic securities bhi aapke paas, and then you have forward contracts, and then you have investments, and then you have so many other things, contingency fund, asset development fund. How to maintain this capital reserve, how to provide allocation or how to allocate funds to this capital reserve, ye cheez इकोनॉमिक कैपिटल फ्रेमवर्क बताता है आरबीआई को. एंड देयर आर टू क्लियर ऑब्जेक्टिव्स फॉर ईसीएफ. One is that RBI as a macroeconomic institution will have a responsibility कि किसी भी प्रकार से क्राइसिस आता है, फाइनेंशियल सिस्टम को रिस्क होता है, RBI will have to manage that. To meet such a crisis, RBI needs adequate funds. They should be a part of capital reserve. वो एक foresightedness होनी चाहिए. That is the first objective. Second thing, transferring the remaining part as net income to the government, because all of that is being managed so that excess money or surplus money can be used by the government in howsoever inefficient manner, but still to be used by the government for welfareism and welfare activities. As simple as that. Now the process itself to add funds to the capital reserve is an yearly one. Har saal, every year, after every 1 year, money is added. Chak ching, right? That money is added in the capital reserves. एंड वो उसमें से इट अलॉट्स दैट मनी आउट ऑफ इट्स नेट इनकम टू द कैपिटल रिजर्व। हर साल, एक साल में एक बार ऐसा रहता है। नाउ हाउ मच फंड्स शुड बी एडेड टू द कैपिटल रिजर्व every year depends upon how risky situation is with respect to the entire financial system. The process of allocation of funds today is known as provisioning, particularly after 2014. पहले टोटल इनकम में से सीएफ एंड एडीएफ निकलता था, अब सीएफ एंड एडीएफ की प्रोविजनिंग पहले होती है एंड बाद में नेट इनकम बनती है। दैट इज व्हाट यू हैव टू रिमेंबर, नंबर वन। Further, after allotting the money to the capital reserve, the remaining net income is transferred to the government as profits. Now, the government is a shareholder of RBI as per the government, and that is why the income should be transferred to the government as per the RBI Act, Section 47. A very important fact that this provision is actually statutory. ये कोई किसी नॉर्म के ऊपर बेस्ड नहीं है. इट इज नॉट अ कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल फैक्ट. इट इज एसोसिएटेड टू अ स्टैट्यूट, दैट इज आरबीआई एक्ट 1934. द डिटर्मिनेशन ऑफ दिस अमाउंट टू बी प्रोविजन, कि कितना आपको कैपिटल रिजर्व में डालना है, ये बहुत मुश्किल है. How to understand risk kitna, because it is not a tangible thing, it is not a measurable thing, it is not a numerable thing. Risk cannot be measured as such. Yes, you can follow the Basel norms, I will talk about that as well today. Now, but still, risk scenario kitna hai, kaise hai, it is difficult to ascertain. Deciding the size of provisioning is a critical task. For adjusting and determining the central bank's capital reserve, we have a methodology जो कि बनाई गई है by RBI, and that is economic capital framework. What is this economic capital framework? मैं पिछले 15 मिनट से economic capital framework बोल रहा हूं, आप में से किसी ने सवाल नहीं पूछा. Let's understand that. It is a very objective, rules based, ट्रांसपेरेंट मेथोडोलॉजी जिसके तरीके से फंड एलोकेशन हम डिसाइड कर लेते हैं, एंड इट इज a part of the statute. Why? Because this transfer is to be made under section 47 of RBI Act. और इसको, इस statutory provision को implement करने के लिए, so to say, you have this framework, which itself is not a part of the statute, but the provisioning that it helps in maintaining is a part of the statute. Now, there were several attempts to frame ECF, लेकिन अभी लेटेस्ट जो चेंजेस आए हैं, the design of ECF that we follow today had changed in 2018, and it was under Bimal Jalan, the new committee that had been created, और उसके recommendations को पूरे तरीके से मान लिया गया था, and those recommendations have led to the modern day ECF और the economic capital framework, जिसके बेसिस पर आप capital reserves में transfers करते हैं, provisioning करते हैं. Now, what is this expert committee on economic capital framework has been talking about? The central board in its meeting in November 2018 created this expert committee, but this is not the first time. In 1997, Subramaniam Group was sat down, made to sit down. Malegam committee was made to sit down in 2014. ECF framework was brought in 2015, and even in 2004 there was Usha Thorat committee, and various suggestions and recommendations were made with respect to ECF. Now, what were the recommendations of the Bimal Jalan committee? We are going to discuss that in today's lecture. Now, the expert committee gave a number of recommendations, somewhere around 13-14 major recommendations hai, sabko hi discuss karenge. Now, what they have seen is that, and it was appointed at the time when the net income to the government, transfer to the government, was at all times high, 99%. Several observers have given their opinions that RBI is having surplus account, इनको पैसा transfer कर देना चाहिए. The committee was appointed in November 2018. Report was published in August 2019, the next year. And that is why I say this is the latest one. उसके बाद तो COVID आ गया था, and you know the rest. All the recommendations have been accepted by RBI. जो RBI पहले आनाकानी कर रहा था before the committee, after the committee recommendations, it accepted all that was being said. Now, the first thing that it said, there should be harmony between the interests of the government and RBI. ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए government चाह रही है that there should be excess of funding, investment should increase, and RBI saying कि मेरे को monetary policy को tight करना है, I want reduction in money supply. this will not work in tandem. तो ये दोनों एक दूसरे के ऑपोजिट काम कर रहे होंगे. They'll have to work in harmony. Number one. Number two, whether RBI's capital reserve is enough or whether it is surplus or in deficit, this is something that we will have to determine. Now, the committee identified there is excess in realized equity. For example, it is somewhere around 26,280 crores to 62,456 crores as of June 2018. So yes, the committee said that RBI के पास बहुत excess है. It can transfer funds to the government. As far as the role of contingency fund is concerned, it is the real reserve that is used to manage any kind of financial crisis. क्योंकि इसी में से ही CGRA को भी पैसा चला जाता है, for example, and it is the major contingency risk buffer which this CRF or the CRB, it acts like country saving just in case कोई rainy day situation आ जाती है like in 2008 or like in 1991. So this is the contingency fund is the most important fund of them all, जो पांच की लिस्ट की थी. Then further, the meeting financial stability risks, it requires more money. So you will have to make sure, what happens is that committee recommended that the risk buffer, which is in the range of 5.5% to 6.5% of RBI's balance sheet for meeting this risk. But this level is 2.4% of the balance sheet as of June 2008. और चाहिए कितना? 5.5 से 6.5%. And है कितना? Almost 2.5%. So almost, let's say, less than half has been kept, and it should be more. So RBI was asked to increase this buffer. Further, RBI's capital reserve seemed to be big enough because revaluation of gold, it has been in positive, foreign currency, etc., and not due to fund allocation to capital reserves from its own profits. But still, it had enough money to transfer to the government. And that is why it suggested that it should do the same. It also recommended that ECF should be reviewed every 5 years. 2019 में ये बात बोली थी, and now it is 2023. People in 2024 particularly or in 2023 appearing in UPSC should be very focused about this fact. If there is any significant change in RBI's risk factor or the operating environment, then the intermediate review can also be considered. एक साल के बाद, after 1 year or 2 years, it can happen again. July, June can be brought in sync. The accounting year of RBI can be brought in sync with fiscal year of April, March, and from the financial year 2020-2021. This was suggested and it was accepted as a fact. It would also bring greater cohesiveness with respect to government as well as the monetary policy projections. Apart from that, report also suggested that remove the interim payout in general circumstances. Interim payouts to the government should only be in extraneous, extraordinary circumstances, not in normal course of action. ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए. Further, what are the types of risks जिसको RBI को कंसिडर करना पड़ेगा to determine the size of capital reserve? Number one, currency related risks. If there is any deep or sharp fall or rise of foreign currency assets or huge volumes are changing, then gold price risk, interest rate risks, फॉर एग्जाम्पल विद रिस्पेक्ट टू गवर्नमेंट सिक्योरिटीज, अगर यील्ड जो है उसकी अचानक से बढ़नी शुरू हो जाए फॉर दैट मैटर, और इफ देयर इज एनी इंपैक्ट ऑन द इंटरेस्ट रेट्स बिकॉज ऑफ वट एवर पॉलिसी द फेडरल रिजर्व इज फॉलोइंग. अगर अगर फेडरल रिजर्व बढ़ा रहा है इन दैट सर्कमस्टांस, इन सर्टेन सर्कमस्टांसेस, देन इट इज अ रिस्क फैक्टर. Then credit risk, if bonds and loans to the commercial banks, there is any issue with respect to bonds and loans. If there are operational risks due to potential problems in the operational segment of RBI, monetary and financial stability risks. Why? Because certain financial institutions like banks, or if there is any liquidity problem, for example with ILS and FS, यहां पर इस फैक्टर में वो आ जाता. So all these can be considered the determining factors with respect to what would be the risk when capital reserves are to be determined. Further, the committee had also observed that there are no significant threats of the risks. अभी इस point of time पे ऐसा कोई risky atmosphere नहीं है, and these following types of risks that I've already discussed, for example, would be the only reason that RBI should worry about the capital reserve. Further, it also recommended the risk level to be determined on the basis of a methodology, which is going to be under ECF. And to keep the financial resilience of RBI maintained, एक ES methodology, expected shortfall methodology to measure the market risk, not the exact one, but the expected one. तो you will have to presume कि on the basis of market risk कितने issues हो सकते हैं, on that basis you can maintain the capital reserve. This will help you make sure that RBI's capital reserves are resilient and strong, क्योंकि आप फ्यूचर के हिसाब से चल रहे हैं. Then further, ADF can be used as risk provision. ADF can be used to be considered as a risk provision if needed. नहीं तो सारा बर्डन जो है वो सीएफ के ऊपर, कंसोल आपका कंटिंजेंसी फंड के ऊपर आ जाता है. दैट शुड नॉट बी द केस. अच्छा, माइंड यू, कंटिंजेंसी फंड ऑफ इंडिया एंड कंसोलिडेटेड फंड ऑफ इंडिया एंड पब्लिक अकाउंट ऑफ इंडिया, दीज आर थ्री डिफरेंट अकाउंट्स विद रिस्पेक्ट टू द गवर्नमेंट. ऑल ऑफ दिस दैट वी हैव बीन डिस्कसिंग इज अ पार्ट ऑफ आरबीआई. ये अलग चीज है. नाउ आरबीआई की जो बैलेंस शीट है, it should be reformatted. The government, the committee had recommended that as well. And further, ELA, the emergency liquidity assistance, it will be riskier if there is high level of non-performing assets. So the liquidity assistance that you have to provide, it will further enhance the risks if there are high levels of non-performing assets. So we'll have to work on removing or reducing in the banking sector these non-performing assets as well. Further, ELA, this emergency liquidity circumstance, this parameter is a crisis time financing where the central bank provides money to the financial institutions. Imagine the government in United States offering bailout packages to various banks. Somewhat like that, somewhat similar to like that. Now, ELA, significant credit risk can arise from ELA operations because, for example, RBI can even face losses in ELA. See, as far as the the ELA, which is emergency liquidity assistance, this assistance is concerned, this will either infuse a lot of liquidity into the system or would want to take out a lot of liquidity. And it is a matter of exigency, particularly to safeguard certain financial institutions when they need temporarily, if they need liquidity. Only then. Now, government ownership has prevented runs in the banks, but still recapitalization is still burdensome. Banks को वापस से पैसा infuse करना, it is still burdensome, even though the government has been a very strong backing for these financial institutions. Now, according to the report of the committee, large public sector ownership was a positive factor to prevent bank runs in the past. But abhi kya hai? Because NPAs have increased, recapitalization by the government needs to increase as well. So that is what the committee talked about. Now, recent decisions that have happened only recently by RBI as a part of this entire initiative, let's go through that. Number one, Basel Regulatory Capital Framework. Now, the board has concurred जो CRAR होता है, capital, be it in tier 1 or tier 2, capital to risk weighted average ratio. Weighted average ratio. Now, this CRAR, or sometimes referred to as CAR of banks, it will remain at 9%. Earlier, RBI thought कि उसको कम करके 8% पे ले आएंगे, but then RBI realized that these people are creating NPAs over NPAs. I cannot allow a 1% decline in the capital to risk weighted average ratio, which is like a provisioning which provides safeguard to the banks just in case NPAs occur. So RBI maintained that 9% mark. Further, the extension of transition period for capital conservation buffer by 1 year up to March 2020 was also in line with this regulatory framework guidelines from Basel norms. Further, liquidity for stressed MSMEs. It is said that RBI's board has advised the RBIs to consider a scheme to restructure the stressed assets from MSME borrowers, because MSME is a very big chunk of India's incorporation. Further, there is this economic capital framework that we have already talked about. Now, the nodal agency within RBI, for example, is the board for financial supervision. Now, the board has shown its maturity and wisdom while deciding and constituting this committee with respect to ECF, the Bimal Jalan committee, and also the examination of prompt corrective action. The prompt corrective action ensures the health of banking sector. Both of these terms and both of these things are associated directly with the BFS, and that is Board for Financial Supervision. With all of that knowledge, we have understood what the capital reserve is, what is it made up of, how it is made up of, how what all things is it made up of, और हर एक चीज प्रोविजनिंग समझा हमने, मार्क्ड टू मार्केट क्या होता है, अनरियलाइज्ड प्रॉफिट लॉसेस समझा, एंड ऑल्सो द ईसीएफ एंड बिमल जालन कमिटी recommendations, and what was this issue or this hiccup. With that, I rest my case here. I hope you have an awesome day and awesome evening ahead. Thank you so much for going through this entire session. Keep calm and stay tuned to Sriram's IAS. This is me, Sanat Dutt Bhardwaj, signing off. Thank you. God bless you all. I'll see you on the other side. Bye bye.